Good afternoon everybody, it's Beth here again for another Wednesday Wellbeing video. This afternoon we're going to be thinking about how to deal with things coming to an end or dealing with losses, shall we say. We can't avoid changes in life, and changes always tend to involve some kind of ending in order to move forward. Life is full of endings. There's the endings of jobs, leaving home, the end of the single life if you move in with somebody or get married, moving house, the end of relationships, bereavements. Some of the endings that we experienced are forced, they're out of our control, and some of them we choose to make. But whichever, they can be disorientating to one level or another. The lifestyle we lead, the jobs we have, the people we share our lives with, all affect our identity, and when things change, that can be unsettling. And particularly recently, we've experienced a huge number of endings and losses in our lives due to coronavirus. We've lost our normal habits and routines, we've lost a lot of our freedoms and our autonomy in deciding where we go, what we do, how we spend our time. We've lost out on holidays, on celebrations, on weddings. Some of us will have lost jobs, or our incomes may have reduced. We may have lost security and a general way of life, really. Many of us may have experienced bereavements, the deaths of loved ones, or we may have had our health impacted on by the current situation. And for those of us here, many of us are used to being in Space4 every week or several times a week. I think I and many other people find that we miss it greatly, and that's been a big loss in our lives. But it's a particularly good time for us to think about endings as a Space4 community, as we're about to lose our manager Christine, who will be leaving at the end of this week. And all of these losses or endings will include, to some degree or another, a level of grieving or a level of uncertainty about what the future holds for us. It might be that we would say that on paper at least, these losses aren't as bad as losing a loved one. I always say this, just because somebody is worse off than you doesn't make your situation better, so anyhow. And one thing that's particularly distinctive about the last few months is the cumulative effect of all these changes that we've been through. And when you get lots of losses on top of each other, it's much more difficult to cope with. So as we're going through a transition, as one stage of life is ending, or one aspect of our life is ending, there is a recognised psychological process that we go through. The first stage is acknowledging the endings, and accepting that this ending is actually happening. And sometimes that can be difficult, the way that often it's difficult to accept somehow that somebody has died, maybe to a lesser extent or maybe not. It can be difficult to accept a significant change in our life as something is coming to an end. And we may have complex feelings as we're in the process of disengaging from one phase, say a job, to move on to something else. We should allow ourselves to feel the loss and to experience the emotions, and not to beat ourselves up about feeling sad, because it's a part of the process that we need to go through to move forward onto something else. The next phase of this process is known as the neutral zone, which is where we do most of the processing of our emotions and our thoughts around the change that's happening, the one thing ending and moving on to a new beginning. And the impact that this ending will have on who we are and the roles we have and so on. And we tend to sort of reframe our own concept of our own identity, even if it's not a conscious process. And the third phase of this psychological process is the new beginning. It's the time when we eventually find that we have let go of the situation that we're leaving. We're focusing on the new beginning. This can sometimes be imperceptible change, but our mind shifts into focusing on the new possibilities of the new beginning that we've made. And the circumstances of whatever change that has occurred can affect how easy it is for us to move on. If we've been made redundant, for example, we may find it harder to accept than if we'd chosen to leave a job. Our attitude towards change in general, as well as this specific change, that whatever change it is that we're going through at the time, our attitude can affect how well we adapt or how difficult we find it. There's no set rule book that will give us instructions on how to deal with the emotional side of endings and losses. And these situations tend to involve using up a lot of our emotional energy as we worry and we speculate on potential outcomes of the changes that are happening. And if you think about it, just even in something as relatively simple as a football match, I know some of us take our football very seriously, but as we're watching a football match and as the match goes on and one team takes the lead and then maybe the other team makes a comeback and takes the lead, and it's a back and forth situation and we can't always predict what the outcome will be. Even if our preferred team wins the match, the emotional roller coaster that we go through along the way can leave us absolutely exhausted and wrung out at the end of it. And the current situation that we all find ourselves in, there's not all that many wins, so you don't necessarily get the bonus of the wins in order to help you deal with that situation. Another aspect that can be exhausting is reorganising our routines and patterns in life, and we've all had to do quite a lot of that recently. For example, when somebody retires, and I think my father found this, there's usually a few months of feeling lost while you get used to the adjustment and re-establishing your identity as beyond your working life, and establishing routines that don't revolve around your working life. And that as well can be exhausting, and you would think you would be suddenly bursting with energy having given up work. But there are things that we can do to improve the way we cope with dealing with endings. Number one is to remind ourselves of the challenges and changes, or the endings, the losses that we've dealt with in the past, and think about the ways that you've been resilient through those processes. What is going to be different as a result of whatever ending you're facing at the moment, or whatever change it is that you're going through, and think of the good differences as well as the bad differences. What personal traits, what skills do you have that will help you through those changes, and what actions could you take to make those changes easier and see yourself through the current challenge? by thinking through these things, you can focus on strengths and things that you can control, and therefore you're starting from a point of feeling empowered. Number 2, consider your priorities. Really try to view endings as an opportunity rather than something to fear. Think about what is important to you. So it might be that you've used lockdown, for example, to focus on building on your family life, and so that you've made the best of a situation that may potentially have been a difficult one, but you've turned it to good. And have a look at your feelings about whatever it is that the situation is, and examine whether your feelings are a response to the facts involved or a response to speculation about what might happen. And therefore you can identify potentially how justified you are in any emotions that you're feeling, and is it a situation that you can turn to the good? What opportunities does it present to you? How can you influence what form the future takes? Number 3, be in the present. And I think you're probably bored of hearing me say this by now, but again, there's a lot more about this in the mindfulness video that I did. Don't lose the now by worrying about the future. Focus on enjoying what you have here and now, and that might be, you know, just simple things like enjoying a walk in the countryside, or enjoying a family dinner, or snuggling up with a good book and your cat on your knee. And you can use mindfulness techniques to help you appreciate what's going on here and now much more, and to get into a pattern of thinking about the present much more. And another way you can be in the present is to really think about what is getting better in your life as a result of whatever changes or endings are happening. And finally, again, probably another one you're fed up of hearing, is to practice self-care, to look after yourself, and pay attention to your own needs, especially seeking support and talking to people about how you're feeling, but also giving yourself a bit of time and space for thinking and for processing what's going on. Again, as I always say, it's not a list of instructions that you have to follow to the letter. You may find there's some things that in there that are helpful and worth trying, and it's not an exhaustive list. There will be other things out there that are helpful. This is just a summary. But in respect to Space4, I know I've felt this a bit for myself, and so have other people that I've talked to. We may find ourselves being a bit worried about the future of Space4 and what direction it will go in, and whether it will fulfil the same role in our lives. Everybody on the Space4 team is absolutely committed to taking it forward and to keeping it going, and to keeping the principles and priorities going as well. We will all miss Christine terribly, but Christine isn't moving away, so we will bump into her now and then about Houghton Le Spring, and I'm sure we all want to wish her all the very best as she moves on. That's all for this afternoon, except to say have a very good week, and bye bye for now. Bye bye.